The conference hall hung suspended in the void like a jewel of illumination. Headquarters for the Galactic Unity Council circled Varath Prime, the most ancient and formidable planet across all charted territories. Within the enormous circular auditorium, delegates from 43 different civilizations occupied their assigned zones. Every section was customized to match the unique biological requirements of its inhabitants. The Kalari thrived in intense thermal conditions. The Torvin demanded reduced gravitational fields. The Scythian inhaled methane using sophisticated filtration masks. Earth's ambassador Park Minio occupied the human quarter. 3 modest chairs sat in an arena capable of housing thousands. He dressed in an unadorned black suit, the traditional attire Earth's diplomats had favored for generations. Silver streaked his temples. His expression remained neutral, yet his fingers rested deliberately on the electronic tablet before him. The urgent assembly had been summoned 6 hours earlier. The alert had broadcast throughout Council territory carrying maximum urgency designation. Park immediately grasped its significance. The danger they'd all dreaded for months had finally arrived. High Chancellor Vexthor positioned himself at the chamber's focal point. His Torvin heritage gave him the appearance of sculpted azure crystal. Radiance flowed through his form in configurations that revealed his emotional state. Currently, those configurations appeared jagged and hostile. His declaration resonated through the interpretation network. "The Void Swarm has materialized at the Corvin sector's perimeter," Vexthor proclaimed. "Distance surveillance verifies a formation of no fewer than 50,000 biological vessels. They'll arrive at our frontier settlements within 72 hours. The assembly exploded into chaos. Delegates shouted across dozens of dialects. The interpretation network labored to process everything. Park remained motionless and observed. Silent. Vexthor's command sliced through the cacophony. "We've confronted the swarm previously. They're scavengers, opportunistic raiders. We'll position the Torvin armada toward the endangered zones. The Kalari Shield Division will create protective formations. The emergency will be contained." Park activated his request indicator. A gentle tone sounded. Vexthor's crystalline gaze shifted toward the human delegation. For an instant the Chancellor appeared prepared to disregard the appeal. Subsequently, displaying evident unwillingness, he acknowledged. "Earth's ambassador seeks to address the assembly," Vexthor stated. His inflection clarified his opinion regarding the matter. Park rose. He advanced toward the speaker's dais at the chamber's center. Surrounding him, delegates from civilizations that had traversed the cosmos for millennia gazed downward, some displaying curiosity, most barely concealing their disdain. "Appreciation, Chancellor," Park began. His tone stayed measured. "Earth has tracked the Void Swarm's trajectory for 14 weeks. We've assembled comprehensive strategic evaluation. Our defense analysis suggests this represents an unprecedented incursion." He triggered his electronic tablet. 3-dimensional projections materialized above the assembly. They displayed stellar maps, migration sequences, and composition breakdowns. "The swarm's advanced trajectory contradicts typical raiding behavior," Park elaborated. "They're advancing in synchronized formation. Our remote monitoring outposts have registered gravitational disturbances, suggesting their actual formation size vastly exceeds present calculations. We suspect the observable fleet constitutes merely the vanguard element." Whispers rippled across the chamber. Multiple delegates were openly scoffing. Respectfully, Park continued, and his voice gained slight steel. "Earth requests authorization to position our combat fleets for supplementary protective coverage. We maintain 847 vessels prepared for immediate deployment. Our craft can supply additional protection in zones the primary council formations cannot access expeditiously." The derision intensified. A Kalari delegate rose to her feet. Chivorex was her designation, and her scales shimmered crimson and golden beneath the chamber illumination. "The human presents us with spacecraft," she remarked, her voice saturated with condescension. "What vessels does Earth possess? Ships still employing chemical thrust systems, physical projectile launchers requiring solid ammunition." She pivoted to confront Park squarely. "Ambassador, your civilization barely ventured beyond your solar system 5 decades ago. Entrust combat operations to those who've mastered them across thousands of years." Additional voices supported her position. The Scythian delegate communicated through his translation device. "Human strategic assessment founded on what experience? Your species has never encountered an authentic spatial menace. You comprehend nothing regarding genuine warfare," Park's demeanor remained unchanged. He'd anticipated this reception. Earth consistently received identical treatment within the Council. Humanity remained perpetually too recent, too undeveloped, too alien. Our evaluation derives from substantial evidence, Park stated calmly. We've positioned sensor arrays across dark space regions. We've monitored the swarm's assembly locations. Should the Council examine our intelligence collected with inferior apparatus? Another delegate interjected. Monitoring equipment that cannot rival Torvin detection system. Assessment conducted by tactical minds lacking authentic combat background. Vexthor lifted his hand. The chamber became quiet. The Chancellor's internal luminescence configurations displayed something resembling sympathy blended with annoyance. Ambassador Park, Vexthor spoke deliberately, as though clarifying something to an immature individual. Earth's apprehension is acknowledged. Nevertheless, the Galactic Unity Council has safeguarded civilization for 10,000 years. We've encountered the Void Swarm repeatedly. We comprehend their behavioral patterns. We recognize their vulnerabilities. Your civilization demonstrates eagerness, which proves admirable, but eagerness isn't proficiency. Park stood absolutely motionless. Chancellor, our evidence indicates. Your evidence remains fragmentary, Vexthor countered. Founded on restricted sensor capacity and inexperienced interpretation. The Torvin Armada independently possesses greater destructive capability than your entire civilization could produce. Our energy armaments can purify whole continents. Our defensive barriers can endure direct stellar core temperatures. What contribution does Earth bring to this confrontation? Metal projectiles launched from electromagnetic accelerators. Fusion warheads that your species celebrates as accomplished. Mockery reverberated through the chamber once more. Park absorbed it all. Every scornful tone, every dismissive remark. He'd endured it for 3 years, since Earth had received Provisional Council status. Humanity remained perpetually the undeveloped beings who imagined they belonged among the genuinely sophisticated. The swarm evolves, Park declared, and his voice penetrated the disturbance. They acquire knowledge. They modify their physiology to neutralize whatever armaments succeeded previous. Energy-focused assaults that triumphed in the previous encounter might prove ineffective presently. Tactical diversity could prove valuable. Diversity? Shivarek scoffed. Is that terminology humans employ for being backward? Ambassador, your species conducts warfare as though you're still in your planet's manufacturing era. Physical projectiles, chemical detonations. You celebrate these elements as though they're breakthroughs rather than antiquities. A Torvin military commander stood upright. Carvin was his designation, and his record included triumphs in 30 significant conflicts. I examined Earth's defense specifications, he stated. His inflection wasn't quite ridiculing, but approached it. Your largest warship measures 4 million tons. Our destroyers exceed that. Your armaments require proximity to visual engagement range. Our lance projectors strike from light-minute distances. How precisely do you intend to assist? Park regarded the commander. By accomplishing what requires completion, which means prevailing. The chamber went silent momentarily. Then Vexthor actually produced laughter. It resembled the sound of crystal resonance fracturing. Such boldness, such determination. This explains our admiration for humanity. Ambassador Park, you possess bravery. You possess resolve. But bravery without capability produces merely noise. And candidly, Earth's capabilities aren't relevant to this circumstance. Park collected his electronic tablets. Then Earth withdraws our assistance proposal. A prudent choice, Vexthor responded. Allow your species to observe and comprehend how the Council manages authentic threat. Consider it an instructional experience. Park walked back toward his section. As he passed various delegates, he detected their murmured observations. Did they genuinely believe we required them? Humans and their arrogance. Let them experiment with their antiquated armaments at home. He sat down. His expression still revealed nothing. Internally, a frigid calculation was processing. He'd attempted. He'd cautioned them. They'd made their selection. The Council proceeded with its assembly. Strategic plans were examined. The Torvin Armada would constitute the principal assault force. 300 vessels of remarkable power. The Kalari Shield Division would create protective boundaries around the settlements. Their energy barriers could shield entire planets. The Scythian would supply logistical support. Everything was arranged. Everything was assured. The swarm will shatter against our fortifications as they consistently have. Vexthor declared within 72 hours this danger will be neutralized. Council is dismissed. The delegates started departing. Park remained seated briefly. His aide, a young human woman named Kim Soo-jin, positioned herself close. "Ambassador, should we relay the refusal to Earth Command?" she inquired discreetly. Park confirmed. "Utilize the priority channel direct to Fleet Admiral Choi." "What communication should I transmit?" Park considered momentarily. "Inform the Admiral that the Council has rejected Earth's assistance. Inform her they believe their energy armaments and barrier technology will prove adequate." Soo-jin's eyes expanded slightly. "And the Admiral's reaction will be Protocol 7. Park stated quietly. Soo-jin became pale. Protocol 7 wasn't something openly referenced. It wasn't in any formal records, but every human in the diplomatic service understood what it signified. "Are you certain?" she whispered. Park stood upright. He surveyed the emptying chamber. He observed delegates congratulating themselves on their excellent protective strategy. He observed Vexthor conversing with military commanders, his crystal body radiating with assurance. He observed Shiverex laughing with her assistants about the undeveloped humans who imagined they could contribute. "I am certain," Park stated. "Earth will address this our own method." He proceeded toward the departure. Behind him, Soo-jin activated her encrypted communicator. The transmission would reach Earth in 6 hours, traveling on quantum-linked channels that even the Council didn't know humanity possessed. In the passageway outside, Park passed a cluster of Kalari junior officers. They were still laughing about something. "Did you hear the human wanted to position their fleet?" one remarked, as though metal containers with chemical propulsion could make a difference. "I wonder if they even comprehend how to engage in three-dimensional combat." Another responded, "Their whole civilization thinks warfare is still about aiming guns and pulling triggers." Park continued walking. He didn't react. There was no purpose. He reached the human diplomatic office. It was modest, positioned in a station section that received minimal traffic. Inside, his small staff was already organizing departure. They'd been expecting this. "Sir," his deputy ambassador, Lee Sung-min, looked upward. "Are we really proceeding with this?" "The transmission has been sent," Park stated. "We have 48 hours to evacuate all non-critical personnel from Council territory. They'll pose questions. Allow them to ask." Park moved to his office viewport. Outside, he could observe Verath Prime rotating slowly beneath. Magnificent, timeless, secure in its safety, secure in its superiority. He contemplated Fleet Admiral Choi So-yan. She would have received his earlier strategic assessments. She would have examined the genuine data from Earth's remote space sensors. She would comprehend what was approaching, and she would comprehend what to execute. Ambassador Soo-jin appeared in the doorway. "I have verification from Earth Command. Admiral Choi transmits her acknowledgement. She indicates to inform you that humanity recalls its allies and the Council was never our ally." Park nodded slowly. "Commence evacuation protocols. I want every human civilian removed from Council territory within 36 hours. The Council will observe." "Yes," Park stated they will. He gazed out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 847 human warships were receiving revised orders. Orders that would transform everything. The Council had ridiculed Earth's assistance offer. They'd scoffed at human armament. They'd rejected human strategies as primitive and irrelevant. They would learn by daybreak. They would learn precisely what humanity was capable of when the civilized civilizations chose to disregard what required completion. Park's reflection in the viewport showed no expression, but his eyes were hard as stone. "They should have paid attention," he stated quietly. The surveillance station at the Kalari space boundary had been monitoring the identical sector for 6 hours. 3 specialists sat at their positions tracking hundreds of vessels as they traveled through the standard patrol routes. It was tedious work, the assignment that junior officers received when they needed to develop patience. Specialist Third Class Vantok was verifying the human fleet locations from routine more than requirement. Earth vessels consistently remained in their designated patrol zones. They observed the regulations precisely, predictable, straightforward, monotonous. Then his screen flicked. Vantok blinked his inner eyelids and examined the readout again. The contact marker for Human Patrol Group Delta 7 was absent. Not relocating. Not jumping to faster-than-light velocities. Just absent. "Equipment malfunction," he muttered. "Executing a diagnostic. The systems returned clean." He expanded his perspective. Human Patrol Group Delta 9 was also missing. So was Delta 12. Commander Vantok's voice was hesitant. "I am registering anomalous readings on the human fleet locations." Commander Shalri did not glance up from her own screen. "Define anomalous." "They are not there." "Commander." Now Shalri turned. "Explain." 17 human vessels were on patrol in sectors 7 through 15. Now I am reading 0 contacts, no debris signatures, no energy trails, no faster than light wake signatures. They are simply absent from all sensors. Shalri moved to his station. She examined the display, her scales shifting to a concerned orange coloration. Check the other sectors. All of them. Mbantok's claws moved across his controls. The data that came back made no sense. Human ships were disappearing across all of Council space. Not just patrol craft. Everything. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers. Entire battle groups that had been in stable orbits around human colony worlds were showing as absent. Defensive stations that had been operational for years were reading as offline. This is impossible. Shalri whispered. Contact Council Intelligence immediately. Priority alert. The transmission reached Council Intelligence headquarters. 8 minutes later. Within 20 minutes, every major monitoring station in Council space was reporting the same thing. Earth's fleet was vanished. In the Council Intelligence Analysis Center, dozens of specialists gathered around holographic displays. They showed all of known space. Small blue markers indicated human vessels. As they watched, those markers began to blink out. Not all at once, but steadily, methodically. Within a 3-hour period, 847 human warships disappeared from every sensor system in Council space. Director Valshan of the Torvan Intelligence Service stood at the center of the room. His crystalline body pulsed with confused patterns. What are we witnessing? Complete withdrawal. One specialist suggested they are retreating to Earth space. Negative. Another specialist countered. There are no faster than light wake signatures. Nothing on the hyperspace sensors. They are not traveling. They are vanished. Equipment malfunction across every monitoring system, simultaneously. Impossible. Valshan activated his communicator. Get me Chancellor Vexthor, immediately. While they waited, the specialists tried to understand what they were seeing. Several theories emerged. None of them made complete sense. Could it be a technological failure? Someone asked. If the human ships lost power simultaneously, they would still register on passive sensors. An expert replied. Mass that large cannot hide. We would detect gravitational distortion, thermal signatures. What if they activated some kind of concealment technology? That suggestion caused several specialists to scoff. Humans, concealment technology sophisticated enough to fool Torvan sensors. They barely grasped quantum mechanics. But the mockery died quickly because whatever was happening, it was real, and it was complete. A junior specialist named Kim Ji-won sat at a workstation in the corner. He was human, one of only a handful working in Council Intelligence. He had earned his position through excellent work, though his colleagues never let him forget that he was from a primitive species. Kim, one of the Kalari specialists, called. You are human. Explain what your people are doing. Kim looked at his screen. He saw the same data everyone else. His expression showed no emotion. I do not know. You must have some idea. Is this a retreat? Are your people abandoning the Council? I do not know, Kim repeated. Your home world is withdrawing its entire military presence during a crisis. You expect us to believe you know nothing? Kim met the specialist's eyes. I am a civilian intelligence specialist. I am not informed of military operations. He paused. But if I were to speculate, I would say you should have listened to Ambassador Park. Before anyone could respond, Chancellor Vexthor appeared on the main display. His crystalline face showed confusion and growing anger. Explain this situation, he demanded. Director Valshan gestured to the displays. Chancellor, Earth's fleet has disappeared from all monitoring systems. We have 0 contacts on any human military vessel outside of Earth's home system. Disappeared? You mean retreated? Negative, Chancellor. We mean disappeared. No travel signatures, no energy trails, no communication signals. They are simply absent. Vexthor's light patterns shifted to angry red. This is unacceptable. The Void Swarm will arrive in 58 hours. We are facing a crisis, and Earth chooses this moment to play games with us. We do not believe this is a game, Chancellor. Then what is it? No one had an answer. Vexthor's voice became harder. Contact the human diplomatic station. Demand an explanation. Inform them that this behavior violates Council protocols, but when they tried to reach the human diplomatic stations, they found those were also closing. Embassy staff were evacuating. Automated messages played on every channel. Earth diplomatic personnel are being recalled. All inquiries should be directed to Earth Central Authority. Thank you for your cooperation. The message was polite, professional, and completely uninformative. They are abandoning us, someone whispered. In our moment of need, the humans are running away. Kim Jae-kwon said nothing, but inside he felt a cold satisfaction. They had mocked Ambassador Park. They had laughed at Earth's offer of help. Now they would learn what it meant when humanity stopped asking for permission. Across Council space, the reaction to Earth's disappearance spread like fire. Military commanders demanded explanations, political leaders called for sanctions, media networks speculated wildly. At a monitoring station near the Corvin colonies, a Kalari scout pilot named Lee Hanna prepared her fighter for a patrol mission. She had been born on Earth, adopted by Kalari parents when she was 3. She served in the Kalari military with pride, but she had never forgotten her human heritage. Her squadron leader gave the briefing. "We are checking the last known positions of human patrol groups. Council wants confirmation that the humans have actually withdrawn." Lee Hanna and 3 other pilots launched. They flew to coordinates where a human destroyer had been on patrol 6 hours ago. Their sensors showed empty space. No contacts, her wingman reported. Not even debris. They moved to the next position. Same result. And the next and the next. "Where did they go?" her wingman asked. "How does an entire fleet just vanish?" Lee Hanna thought about the stories her human grandmother used to tell her. Stories about Earth's military history, about submarines that hunted in silence, about special forces that struck from shadows, about wars won not through superior firepower, but through being where the enemy never expected. "Maybe they did not vanish," she stated quietly. "Maybe they just stopped allowing us to see them. That makes no sense." Does any of this make sense? Back at Council headquarters, the emergency session reconvened. The chamber was full. Every delegate wanted answer. Vexthor stood at the center, his crystalline body showing stress patterns. "The human fleet has withdrawn from Council space," he announced. "All attempts to contact Earth's military command have been unsuccessful. Ambassador Park has departed our space along with all human diplomatic staff." Angry voices filled the chamber. "This is betrayal," one delegate shouted. "They are cowards fleeing from the swarm. Earth should be expelled from the Council." Vexthor raised his hands for silence. "We do not have time for this. The Void Swarm will arrive in 52 hours. The Torvin Armada is in position. The Kalari Shield Fleet is ready. We will handle this threat as we always have, with or without human assistance." But privately in meetings that were not recorded, Council military leaders discussed what Earth's withdrawal meant. 847 ships, one Torvin admiral said. "That is not a small force. We had planned to use them for secondary defensive positions. We can adjust," another replied. "The humans were never critical to our strategy. But where did they go?" That question no one could answer. In the Kalari Shield Fleet flagship, Commander Shiverex studied tactical displays. She was the one who had mocked Park in the Council chamber. Now she felt uncertain. What if the human was right? Her tactical officer asked quietly. "What if this swarm attack is larger than we estimate? Then we will adapt," Shiverex stated firmly. "We always do." But she kept thinking about Park's face when he left the chamber. He had shown no anger, no frustration, just cold calculation, like a man who had already moved on to the next step of a plan. 40 hours before the swarm's arrival, another report came to Council intelligence. This one from deep space monitoring stations at the very edge of explored space. "We are detecting unusual readings," the report said. "Gravitational anomalies in dark space, multiple signatures consistent with large vessels moving through uncharted regions. Swarm advanced scouts." Someone asked. "Negative. The signatures are wrong. These are not biological ships." "Then what are they?" "Unknown. But if we are reading the mass calculations correctly, there are hundreds of vessels out there moving rapidly, moving dark." Director Valshan studied the report with growing unease. He called Kim Jae-kwon to his office. "You are human," Valshan stated without preamble. "And you are intelligent. What are your people doing?" Kim looked at the data. "I do not know. That is not good enough. 847 warships do not just disappear. They did not return to Earth. Our sensors would have detected that. So where are they?" Kim was quiet for a long moment. "Director, may I speak candidly? Please." Ambassador Park came to the Council with intelligence about the swarm. Genuine intelligence based on sensor networks that Earth has been building in dark space for years. Networks that the Council did not know about because no one asked. No one cared what the primitive humans were doing out at the edge of nowhere. Valshan's light pattern shifted. "Continue." Park said this was not a normal swarm raid. He said the visible fleet was just the forward element. He was ignored, mocked, told that humanity knows nothing of war. Kim met the director's crystalline eyes. What if he was right? What if Earth saw something in the data that the Council missed? "You think the human fleet went to engage the swarm?" "I think the human fleet went to do what Ambassador Park said needed to be done. And I think they did not ask for permission, because they knew they would not receive it." Valshan sat down heavily. "If they engage the swarm without Council authorization, if they operate in dark space without coordination, The casualties could be catastrophic. Yes, Kim agreed quietly. They could. Why would they take such a risk? Kim thought about that. He thought about Earth's history. About a species that had fought itself for thousands of years, that had built weapons capable of destroying their own world, that had somehow survived and made it to the stars despite being younger and less advanced than everyone else. Because someone has to, Kim stated finally. And because Earth has never been skilled at waiting for permission to do what is right. The session ended. Valshan sat alone in his office, looking at the tactical displays. The swarm was coming. The Council's forces were. Everything was according to plan, except for the humans. Somewhere out in dark space, 847 human warships were doing something. Something the Council could not see, could not track, could not understand. Valshan thought about what Vexthor had said in the Council chamber. Leave warfare to those who have perfected it over millennia. But war was not about perfection. It was about winning, about doing whatever was necessary, about going to places others would not go. Maybe, Valshan thought, humanity understood that better than species who had spent millennia fighting from comfortable distance with clean energy weapons. Maybe the primitives knew something the civilized species had forgotten. Outside his window, stars burned in the darkness, and somewhere among them, humans were moving in silence, going dark, going deep, going to war in a way that made sense to a species that had learned to fight in the shadows of their own world. The Council would know soon enough. By daybreak everything would be clear, or everything would be over. The void swarm emerged from dark space like a plague made manifest. First came the scouts, small biological ships that looked like twisted combinations of insect and nightmare. They appeared at the edge of the Corvin sector in groups of hundreds, their organic hulls pulsing with sickly bioluminescence. Council sensors detected them immediately. Contact. The monitoring station reported multiple biological signatures entering normal space, confirmed void swarm classification. Admiral Carvin of the Torvin Armada stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Victory. Around him, holographic displays showed the emerging threat. His crew worked with practiced efficiency. They had done this before. Deploy the fleet to attack formation, Carvin ordered. Prepare lance batteries. Target the lead elements. 300 Torvin warships moved into position. Each vessel was a marvel of engineering, built over centuries of accumulated knowledge. Their energy weapons could crack planets. Their shields could withstand anything short of a supernova. The swarm scouts moved forward. They did not form organized lines. They swarmed, as their designation suggested, moving in chaotic patterns that somehow functioned as a coordinated whole. Range in 30 seconds, the tactical officer reported. Lance batteries charged and ready. Fire when ready, Carvin stated calmly. The Eternal Victory's main lance battery released a beam of concentrated energy. It crossed the distance between the fleet and the swarm at the speed of light. The beam struck the lead biological ship and burned completely through. The creature vessel died instantly, its organic hull boiling away. All across the Torvin battle line, lance beams reached out. Dozens of swarm scouts died in the first volley, then hundreds. Target acquisition optimal, the tactical officer reported with satisfaction. They are holding formation, continuing fire, but Admiral Carvin watched his displays with growing concern. The swarm was not retreating. More scouts were emerging from dark space, hundreds, thousands, and behind them, larger shapes were beginning to appear. How many? He asked quietly. Current count exceeds 10,000 small biological ships, the sensor officer replied. Larger contacts now emerging. Classification Swarm Warrior Class. Count rising. Carvin had fought the swarm before, 3 times in his career. Each time they had come in groups of a few thousand at most, raiding forces, looking for organic material to consume. The Council fleets had always driven them back. This was different. Estimate total swarm fleet size, he ordered. The sensor officer worked his controls. The number that came back made him check his readings twice. Admiral, if the emergence rate continues, we are looking at over 1 million biological ships. The bridge went quiet. Confirm that reading, Carvin stated, his voice still controlled. Confirmed, Admiral, this is not a raid. This is an invasion fleet. Carvin activated the fleet-wide CAL. All ships, this is the Admiral. We are facing a larger force than anticipated. Maintain formation. Continue firing. We hold this line, but even as he gave the orders, he thought about Ambassador Park's warning. The human had been correct. This was not a normal swarm attack. The first wave of swarm warriors reached weapons range. They were larger than the scouts with armored carapaces and biological cannons that fired acidic projectiles. The Torvan shields held against the first impact. The lance batteries continued to fire, destroying hundreds of enemy vessels. But more kept coming. In the Kalari shield fleet, Commander Shiverex watched the battle unfold on her tactical displays. Her fleet was positioned behind the Torvan line, ready to establish defensive shields around the colonies if any swarm ships broke through. The Torvan are holding, her tactical officer reported, but the swarm numbers are overwhelming. Shiverex saw it too. For every swarm ship the Torvan destroyed, 3 more emerged from dark space. The enemy was not using tactics, they were using mass, pure terrifying numbers. Ready the shield generators, she ordered. Prepare to cover the colonies. Her communication officer looked up. Commander, we are receiving evacuation requests from the outer colonies. They can see the swarm on their long-range sensors. They are afraid. Tell them the Council fleet will hold. We always have. But Shiverex thought about the dismissive words she had spoken to Park in the Council chamber, about how humans knew nothing of real war. She pushed the thought away. On the colony world of Corvin III, millions of civilians watched the sky and waited. They had faith in the Council fleet. The Torvan had never failed them. The Kalari shields had never broken. Lahana's fighter squadron was on patrol near the Kalari fleet's defensive perimeter. She could see the battle in the distance, flashes of energy weapons lighting up the darkness like a deadly light show. This is bigger than the briefing suggested, her wingman transmitted. They said it would be a raid. That is not a raid. Lahana checked her sensor displays. The swarm kept coming. A flood of biological ships that seemed endless. Negative, she agreed quietly. That is exactly what the human ambassador said it would be. What did he say? That the Council was not ready. That this was different. The Torvan will hold. They always hold. Lahana wanted to believe that. She had trained with the Kalari, served with them. They were brave and skilled, but she had also grown up hearing stories from her human grandmother. Stories about battles where bravery was not enough, where even the strongest defenses could be overwhelmed. The Torvan battle line was beginning to bend. Admiral Carvin saw it happening. His ships were fighting perfectly. Every shot found a target, every shield held. But there were too many enemies. The swarm was not retreating, not slowing. They kept pushing forward, accepting losses that would have broken any thinking species. Third Wing is reporting ammunition depletion. An officer reported. Lance batteries down to 40% charge capacity. Rotate the wing back. Carvin ordered. Bring up reserves. But the reserves were already committed. Every ship in the Torvan armada was engaged and the swarm kept coming. A new type of biological ship emerged from the swarm, mass larger than the warriors. These were heavy assault forms with thick armor that shrugged off lance beam hits. They moved slowly but deliberately toward the Torvan line. Target the heavy forms, Carvin ordered. Concentrate fire. The fleet focused its weapons on the new threat. The heavy assault ships died hard, requiring multiple direct hits to destroy, but more kept coming. And while the Torvan dealt with the heavy ships, the smaller warriors and scouts pressed the flanks. Casualties, Carvin asked. 7 ships destroyed, 23 with heavy damage, shields failing across multiple vessels. In 1,000 years of service, the Torvan armada had never lost 7 ships in a single engagement. The battle continued for 6 hours. The Torvan held their line through discipline and firepower, but slowly, inevitably, the swarm was pushing through. Contact the Kalari fleet, Carvin ordered. Tell Commander Shiverex to activate the defensive shields. Swarm elements will reach the colonies within the hour. Shiverex received the message with a cold feeling in her chest. The Torvan were not holding. For the first time in recorded history, the Torvan armada was being pushed back. Activate all shield generators, she ordered. Cover the colonies, everything we have. The Kalari ships moved into position around the inhabited worlds. Massive shield generators powered up, creating energy barriers that covered entire planets. The shields were strong enough to withstand sustained bombardment from capital ships. They would hold against the swarm. They had to hold. The first swarm warriors to break through the Torvan line hit the Kalari shields at full speed. They died on impact, their biomass burning away against the energy barriers. More followed and more. Shields holding at 97%, the tactical officer reported. Shiverex watched the display. The swarm was throwing itself against the shields in waves. Thousands of biological ships dying every minute. But the numbers did not decrease. For every ship that died, 2 more arrived from dark space. How long can we maintain the shields? She asked quietly. At current power consumption, 72 hours. But if the impact rate increases, it will increase. Shiverex stated she knew it with cold certainty. This was not the end of the attack. This was just the beginning. On the surface of Corvin III, civilians huddled in shelters and watched the sky turn orange with the burn of dying biological ships against the shields. Children cried. Parents tried to comfort them. Everyone wondered the same thing. Would the shields hold? In council headquarters, Chancellor Vexthor received the reports with growing horror. The tactical display showed the truth in painful clarity. The swarm was overwhelming his forces through sheer numbers. The Torvin Armada, undefeated for 1,000 years, was in retreat. The Kalari shields were holding. But for how long? Activate all reserve fleets, he ordered. Every ship we have, deploy them to the Corvin sector immediately. Chancellor, Director Valshan stated carefully. The reserves will take 48 hours to arrive. The colonies may not have that long. Vexthor's light pattern showed something that looked like desperation. Then what do you suggest? We need the humans. The humans abandoned us. Negative, Valshan stated quietly. They went to do what we should have let them do. Ambassador Park warned us. He said this was not a normal attack. He was right. We do not know where the human fleet is. We cannot contact them. Kim Ji-won stepped forward. He had been standing quietly in the corner of the command center, watching the disaster unfold. Chancellor, permission to speak. Vexthor turned to him. Speak. Earth has deep space monitoring networks throughout dark space. Networks that detected the true size of the swarm. If Ambassador Park was right about the threat, maybe he was also right about how to fight it. What did he say? Kim pulled up the recording of Park's speech to the council. They listened to his calm voice, explaining that the swarm approach vector was wrong, that the visible fleet was just the forward element, that diversity of approach might be valuable. He stated, "You do not fight the flood at the shoreline." Kim continued, "He was telling you something, a strategy, but no one listened." Vexthor looked at the tactical display, at the swarm pouring through in endless waves, at his forces being pushed back despite their superior technology. What did he mean? Vexthor asked. "You do not fight a flood at the shoreline," Kim repeated slowly. "You destroy the dam. You stop the source." Understanding dawned on Valshan's crystalline face. Dark space. The humans went into dark space. They are not fighting the invasion fleet. They are attacking the swarm's staging area. With what? Vexthor demanded. Primitive kinetic weapons. Chemical explosives. How does that help us? I do not know, Kim admitted. But 847 ships went somewhere. And humanity does not run from fights. We learned that much about them over the past 3 years. On the Kalari defensive line, Lihana's squadron was ordered to help with evacuation operations. They escorted transport ships carrying civilians away from the colonies. As she flew, Lihana looked out at the battle. The shields were still holding. The Torvin were still fighting, but she could see it was not enough. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. Old stories about ancient wars on Earth, about soldiers who held impossible lines, about last stands and desperate measures. Sometimes her grandmother had said, "The bravest thing is not to hold the line. It is to go into the darkness and fight where the enemy thinks they are safe." Lihana keyed her communicator. "Control, this is Hana. Question. Go ahead. Have we detected any swarm fleet movements in dark space? Any sign of their staging areas being attacked?" There was a pause. Negative. All detected swarm activity is in normal space, attacking our positions. So we do not know what is happening in dark space. Correct. Why? Lihana looked at the stars, just wondering where the humans went. The battle continued. The Torvin fought with everything they had. The Kalari shields held. Millions of civilians waited and hoped. And somewhere in the darkness beyond known space, something was happening. Something the council could not see. Something that would change everything. The Swarm Queen consciousness did not think the way organic individuals thought. It was a collective awareness spread across millions of biological ships, each one a cell in a vast living organism. It had existed for thousands of years, consuming entire star systems, growing ever larger. The Queen consciousness felt satisfaction as it processed reports from the invasion front. The younger species were fighting well, but they would fall. They always did. Energy weapons burned bright and killed many drones, but the swarm was infinite. For every drone lost, 3 more hatched. For every warrior destroyed, 5 took its place. Victory was inevitable. Then the Queen consciousness felt something wrong. Deep in dark space, far behind the invasion front, a supply tendril went silent. Supply tendrils were the swarm's lifelines. Biological ships that carried nutrients from conquered worlds back to the hive clusters. Losing one was unusual, but not alarming. Sometimes they failed. Sometimes they were caught by gravity wells. Then another tendril went silent, and another. The Queen consciousness focused its attention backward, away from the bright battle at the Council's borders, back into the darkness where the swarm had been building its strength for months. Back to the staging areas where millions of biological ships waited to join the invasion. Something was cutting the supply lines. The Queen consciousness directed scout forms to investigate. They jumped through dark space to the last known position of a supply tendril. They found nothing. No debris, no organic residue. Just empty space where a biological ship carrying 10,000 tons of processed nutrients should have been. It was as if the ship had been deleted from existence. The Queen consciousness experienced something it had not felt in 10,000 years. Not fear. Exactly. The swarm did not fear, but uncertainty, confusion. A sense that something was happening outside its understanding. More reports came in. Hive ships in the staging areas were going silent. Not all at once. One here, two there. Small losses that individually meant nothing. But the pattern was wrong. The silence was wrong. The Queen consciousness pulled awareness away from the invasion front and focused on the staging areas. It sent warrior forms to investigate, gave them direct instructions through the psychic link that bound all swarm creatures. Find what is attacking. Eliminate it. Deep in dark space, Fleet Admiral Choi Seo-yan stood on the bridge of the stealth carrier. Silent promise. Around her, tactical displays showed a three-dimensional map of swarm positions. Red markers indicated hive ships. Orange showed supply tendril. Blue showed her fleet positions. Except the blue markers were not quite accurate. Her ships were not exactly where the displays showed them. That was the point. Status? She asked quietly. Her tactical officer, Commander Huang Tae-yang, checked his display. Strike Group 7 reports successful elimination of Hive Cluster 9 Alpha. No alerts detected. Strike Group 3 is in position on target. 12 Delta, waiting for your order. Choi nodded. She was 53 years old, with gray hair tied back in a simple braid. Her uniform was clean but worn. She had been in space for 14 days without rest, running an operation that most species would consider impossible. Execute, she stated. 40 light-years away, 4 human destroyers dropped out of dark stealth and fired. Their weapons were not energy beams. They were tungsten rods accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. Kinetic weapons, the kind of thing the Council had mocked. The rods hit a swarm hive ship with the force of nuclear weapon. The biological ship's organic armor, designed to absorb and disperse energy attacks, did nothing against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The kinetic rods punched through the hive ship's hull, through its internal organs, through the other side, and kept going. The hive ship died silently. No explosion, no energy signature. It just stopped functioning. The human destroyers went dark again and slipped away before any swarm warriors could respond. Choi watched the tactical display update. Another hive ship eliminated that made 63 since the operation began. Admiral, her communication officer stated. We are receiving a coded transmission from the Deep Space Monitoring Network. The Council fleets have engaged the swarm at the Corvin sector. Casualties heavy on both sides. The Torvin are being pushed back. The Kalari have activated planetary shields. Choi said nothing for a moment. She had tried to warn them. Ambassador Park had tried to warn them. The Council had laughed. Now people were dying. How much longer until we reach the Queen Hive? She asked. Commander Huang checked the navigation displays. 36 hours at current approach speed. But Admiral, the Queen Hive is protected by over 10,000 warrior forms. Even with our full fleet, a direct assault would be suicide. Then we do not assault directly, Choi stated. We do what humanity does best. We adapt. She pulled up a display showing the swarm's hive structure. It was complex with multiple layers of support systems. Supply tendrils bringing nutrients. Communication nodes linking the Queen consciousness to the invasion fleet. Breeding clusters producing new biological ships. Target the breeding clusters first, she ordered. Then the communication node. We cut the swarm off from its reinforcements. Then we blind it. Then we eliminate it. Around her, the bridge crew worked in silence. They were professionals, veterans. Many had served together for years. They trusted their admiral and they trusted each other. And they were fighting a war no one else would see. The human fleet had split into 20 smaller strike groups. Each group consisted of 30 to 40 ships. They operated independently, hitting targets across hundreds of light-years of dark space. They used no communication beams that could be detected. No energy signatures that would give away their positions. They moved dark, struck hard, and vanished. Strike Group 12, led by Captain Park Ji-woo in the destroyer Quiet Thunder, approached a swarm breeding cluster. The cluster was a massive biostructure that produced warrior-class biological ships. It was protected by 50 guardian forms. Park studied the tactical display. A direct attack would trigger an alert that would ripple through the entire swarm network. They needed to eliminate the cluster without being noticed. Options? He asked his tactical officer. The cluster has organic sensors that detect energy signatures and movement. If we fire weapons, they will know. What if we do not fire weapons? The tactical officer looked confused. Sir Park smiled slightly. The cluster is in orbit around a dead moon. What if the moon was not as dead as it appears? Understanding dawned. You want to crash the moon into the cluster. I want to adjust the moon's orbit slightly. Make it look natural. Gravitational calculations show that a small course change would put it on a collision path in approximately 6 hours. That is insane, the officer suggested. Probably, but the swarm will see a natural disaster, not an attack. By the time they realize what happened, we will be long gone. They used maneuvering thrusters to attach to the dead moon. Over 3 hours they carefully adjusted its trajectory. The changes were tiny, barely detectable, but physics was physics. The moon's new orbit would degrade and in 6 hours it would impact the breeding cluster. The human ship slipped away into darkness. 6 hours later, the moon crashed into the breeding cluster at 12 kilometers per second. The impact destroyed the entire structure and killed all 50 guardian forms. The swarm detected a catastrophic failure, but saw no attack signature. Natural disaster. Bad luck. Except there was no such thing as luck. Only planning. The Queen consciousness was becoming increasingly confused. Supply tendrils were not just going silent anymore. Entire hive clusters were failing. Breeding facilities were offline. Communication nodes were experiencing disruption, and there was still no clear enemy. The swarm had fought countless species. Energy weapons it understood. Missiles it could counter. Even the Council's advanced shields were just obstacles to overcome with sufficient mass. But this was different. The attacks left no trace, no energy signatures, no debris fields. Targets simply failed and went dark. The Queen consciousness pulled more awareness back from the invasion front. It began recalling warrior forms from the attack on the Council border. Something was attacking the swarm's foundation, and the Queen consciousness needed to protect its core. On the silent promise, Admiral Choi saw the change immediately. The swarm is pulling back forces. Commander Huang reported, we are detecting warrior forms returning from the invasion front to dark space. How many? Current estimates suggest 20% of the invasion fleet is being recalled. Choi allowed herself a small smile. Then it is working. The swarm is afraid. Can it feel fear, Admiral? Everything can feel fear when it starts losing. She activated the fleet-wide communication channel. All 20 strike groups would receive her message, though not in real time. Quantum communication was detectable. She used old-fashioned radio, time-delayed and encoded. All groups. This is Choi. The swarm is recalling forces. That means we are hurting them. Continue operations. Strike hard. Stay dark. 30 hours until final assault on the Queen Hive. Make every shot count. Across dark space, human ships received the message and continued their silent war. Strike Group 7 found a communication relay and destroyed it with precisely placed explosives. The relay went offline and 30,000 swarm biological ships lost contact with the Queen consciousness. Strike Group 15 caught a supply tendril in transit and eliminated it with a spread of torpedoes. 10,000 tons of nutrients that would never reach the swarm forces. Strike Group 3 found a warrior staging area and used their weapons in ballistic mode. Tungsten penetrators fired from extreme range, each one targeted at a hive ship's vulnerable points. 12 hive ships died in 90 seconds. The human ships were gone before the Renning warriors even knew which direction the attack came from. It was not glorious. There were no heroic charges, no dramatic battles with ships exchanging fire at close range. It was systematic elimination, clinical, ruthless, efficient. It was how Earth fought when the rules did not matter. The Queen consciousness finally understood it was facing a new kind of threat. Not energy weapons it could adapt to. Not shields it could overwhelm with numbers, but something that struck from shadows, that killed without being seen, that destroyed the swarm's infrastructure while leaving the combat forces blind and unsupported. For the first time in its long existence, The Queen consciousness made a decision based on survival rather than expansion. It began the recall. All swarm forces, all biological ships return to dark space, protect the core, abandon the invasion. In the Corvin sector, the Kalari and Torvin forces suddenly found the pressure easing. The endless waves of swarm biological ships began to thin, then stopped, then started retreating. Commander Shiverex watched in disbelief as the swarm fleet turned and fled back into dark space. "What is happening?" she demanded. "Why are they retreating?" No one had an answer. Admiral Carvin of the Torvin Armada watched the same impossible sight. In 1,000 years of recorded history, the swarm had never retreated from a battle it was winning. "Pursue," his tactical officer asked. "Negative," Carvin stated quietly. "Something is happening, something we do not understand." At Council headquarters, Chancellor Vexthor stared at the tactical displays in shock. The invasion was over. The swarm was gone. His forces had won, except they had not won. They had been losing badly. Director Valshan stood beside him. "The swarm does not retreat," he stated quietly. "Not unless something has gone catastrophically wrong for them." "But what?" Kim Ji-won stepped forward. "Permission to speak, Chancellor." "Speak." 847 human ships went dark 14 days ago. The swarm invasion began 3 days ago. The swarm is now retreating in panic. I do not believe in coincidences. Vexthor turned to him slowly. "You think the humans did this?" "I think the humans did what Ambassador Park said they would do. They handled the situation their own way. But we have no confirmation, no battle reports, no communication." "Negative," Kim agreed. "Because that is how humanity fights when they are serious. In silence, in darkness, where the enemy never sees them coming." In dark space, Admiral Choi prepared for the final strike. The Queen Hive was ahead, protected by the recalled warrior forms. But those warriors were disorganized, confused, trying to protect a structure they could not see being attacked. "All strike groups," Choi transmitted, "converge on final target. Engage on my mark." 800 human warships, battered and tired but still functional, emerged from stealth simultaneously. They surrounded the Queen Hive from all directions, and they opened fire, not with energy weapons that could be absorbed, with kinetic weapons, with torpedoes, with missiles and railguns, and every solid matter weapon Earth had ever designed. The Queen Hive, built to withstand energy attacks, died in minutes under the kinetic barrage. The Queen consciousness, ancient and vast, felt itself dying. In its final moments, it experienced true fear, and the last thing it processed was a simple thought. What kind of species fights like this? The first human ship to return to Council space was the destroyer Morning Light. She appeared on the edge of the Kalari defensive network 3 days after the swarm retreat. Her hull was scorched black. Her port side showed massive damage where something had torn through the armor. She was running on backup power, her main reactors offline. Lihana's fighter squadron was on patrol when they detected her. "Unknown contact," her wingman reported. "Energy signature is minimal. She is barely moving." Lihana checked her sensor. The ship's transponder was broadcasting human identification codes. "It is one of ours. I mean one of Earth's. Should we escort her in?" Lihana looked at the damaged ship limping through space. "Yes, and tell command we have a human vessel returning. They are going to want to know about this." The Morning Light was not alone. Over the next 6 hours, more human ships appeared. They came singly or in small groups, emerging from the darkness like ghosts. All of them showed damage. Some were missing entire sections. Others were held together with emergency hull patches that glowed red from internal heat. By the second day, 401 human ships had returned to Council space. 446 were never coming home. The Council monitoring stations tracked every arrival. Intelligence officers studied the damage patterns. Military analysts tried to understand what they were seeing. Their shields failed. One Torvin analyst reported, "Multiple vessels show direct impact damage. Whatever they fought, it got close enough to touch. Energy burns on the hulls." Another added, "But not from weapons we recognize. Organic acid damage. They were fighting the swarm." Director Valshan compiled the reports and brought them to Chancellor Vexthor. "The human fleet is returning," he stated, without preamble. "Less than half of what deployed. All survivors show heavy damage." Vexthor looked at the tactical displays. He saw the scattered human ships, many of them barely functional, crawling back to Council space on emergency power. "Where were they?" he asked quietly. "Darks. Based on the damage patterns and the timing, they have been operating in swarm territory since they disappeared. Admiral Carvin's analysts believe they were conducting a strategic strike campaign against the swarm's core infrastructure. With what success? Valshan pulled up new data. The swarm has not been detected anywhere in Council space since their retreat 3 days ago. Long-range sensors show no activity in their previous staging areas. Whatever the humans did, it broke the swarm completely. Vexthor sat down heavily. His crystalline body showed patterns of shame and regret. They saved us. Yes, Chancellor, and we mocked them. Valshan said nothing. There was nothing to say. I want to speak with whoever is commanding the human fleet, Vexthor stated. Arrange a communication link immediately. The message went out to the human ships. Most did not respond. They were too busy with damage control, keeping their vessels operational long enough to reach safe harbor. But one ship responded. The stealth carrier Silent Promise appeared on the edge of Council space, 12 hours after the first human vessels. She was in better condition than most, but even she showed the scars of battle. Her hull was pitted with acid burns. Several of her fighter bays were sealed and venting atmosphere. Her main communications array was destroyed, so she communicated through a backup system. This is Fleet Admiral Choi Seo-yan of the Earth Defense Force vessel, Silent Promise. The transmission stated. To whom am I speaking? Vexthor himself answered. Admiral, this is High Chancellor Vexthor of the Galactic Unity Council. On behalf of the Council, I wish to express our gratitude for— Save it, Choi interrupted. Her voice was tired but firm. I am not interested in gratitude speeches, Chancellor. I have 446 ships that are not coming home. I have 127,000 personnel dead or missing. I have survivors who need medical attention, and ships that need repair facilities. Can you provide those things, or are we on our own? The bluntness shocked Vexthor, but he recovered quickly. All Council facilities are available to your fleet, Admiral. Whatever you need. Then I need dock space for 401 vessels. I need medical teams for approximately 30,000 wounded. And I need your people to stay out of our way while we work. Of course, Admiral, may I ask what happened out there? There was a long pause. When Choi spoke again, her voice was even more tired. We did what needed doing, Chancellor. Ambassador Park warned you this was not a normal swarm attack. You did not listen. So we handled it ourselves. The swarm's queen hive is destroyed. Their breeding clusters are offline. Their communication network is shattered. They will not be a threat to Council space for at least a generation, maybe longer. You destroyed their queen hive. How? With primitive kinetic weapons and chemical explosives, Choi stated, and there was bitter humor in her voice. The things your people mocked in the Council chamber. Turns out solid matter works pretty well against organic targets, especially when you hit them where they are not expecting it. But the casualties, acceptable losses. Choi cut him off. We knew going in that we would take heavy losses. Stealth operations in dark space against a superior enemy force. But someone had to do it. And Earth does not wait for permission to do what is right. The transmission ended. Over the next 3 days, the human fleet made its way to Council stations. Medical teams rushed to help the wounded. Engineers stared in shock at the damage some ships had taken and somehow survived. The destroyer Quiet Thunder arrived with her entire starboard side gone. Captain Park Gi-woo and his crew had sealed off half the ship and lived in the remaining sections for 2 weeks. They had lost 40% of their crew, but completed their mission. The cruiser, Steadfast Resolve, limped in with her main engines destroyed. She had made the journey back using only maneuvering thrusters, a trip that should have taken days stretched to weeks. Her captain reported 18 dead and the ship likely beyond economic repair. The stories emerged slowly. Each ship had tales of desperate battles fought in the darkness, of striking swarm hive clusters and barely escaping, of watching sister ships die in silence, their crews making sacrifices so the mission could continue. And through it all, the human crews did not celebrate. They mourned. In the medical stations, Kalari doctors treated human wounded and marveled at their patients' resilience. This one has burns over 30% of his body, one doctor reported. He should be unconscious with pain, but he refuses sedation until his crew is accounted for. This one has 3 broken ribs and a collapsed lung, another stated. She walked herself to the medical bay and only collapsed after confirming her damage control team had sealed the breach. The Torvin engineers studying the damaged ships made similar observations. This destroyer should not be spaceworthy, one engineer told his supervisor. The structural integrity is compromised in 12 critical points, but the crew reinforced it with whatever materials they had. There is a section held together with welded cooking pots, and it worked well enough to get them home. Ambassador Park Mingyo returned to Council space on the 5th day. He came quietly without announcement. He went directly to the medical stations where human wounded were being treated. He walked through the wards, speaking with each survivor, thanking them, remembering names, asking about crew members who had not made it back. Commander Shivarex found him there sitting beside the bed of a young human officer who had lost both legs in an explosion. "Ambassador Park," she stated quietly. "May I speak with you?" Park looked up. His face showed the weight of everything that had happened. "Commander Shivarex, I remember you from the council chamber." Shivarex felt shame burn through her. "Yes, I was the one who mocked your offer of assistance. I remember. I came to apologize." Park stood. He looked at the Kalari commander and his expression was unreadable. "Your apology is noted, but it changes nothing. 446 ships, 127,000 dead. Because the council was too proud to listen. We did not know." "You did not want to know," Park corrected. "You assumed that because humanity is young we must be ignorant, that because our technology is different, it must be inferior. You judged us without ever trying to understand us." Shivarex had no defense. "You are right, we failed. I failed. But your people succeeded. You saved the council. You saved billions of lives. We did what needed doing," Park stated. "That is all." He turned back to the wounded officer. The conversation was over. Shivarex left the medical bay with her scales showing colors of deep regret. She had learned something important, something the whole council needed to learn. The council convened in emergency session 1 week after the human fleet's return. Every delegate was present. The chamber was full. Chancellor Vexthor stood at the center. His crystalline body showed patterns of humility that few had ever seen before. "We are here to address the recent crisis," he began, "and to acknowledge the truth. The Galactic Unity Council was saved by Earth, by human military forces who fought in darkness and silence while we remained ignorant of their sacrifice." He gestured to the displays showing the damaged human ships in dock. 446 human vessels were lost in action. 127,000 human lives. They died fighting a war we did not know was happening. Died protecting species who had mocked them. Died doing what we could not or would not do. The chamber was silent. "I have reviewed the tactical reports," Vexthor continued. "What Earth accomplished was extraordinary. Their forces penetrated deep into swarm territory. They identified and destroyed the Queen Hive, the breeding clusters, the command infrastructure. They did this with weapons we considered primitive, with tactics we thought outdated. They succeeded where our advanced technology would have failed." Admiral Carvin stood. "I have studied human military doctrine," he stated. "What they did makes sense now. The swarm adapts to energy weapons but kinetic weapons. Solid projectiles. The swarm had no defense against that. Earth knew this. Earth planned for it. While we relied on what had always worked, humanity looked for what would work better." Another delegate stood. "But why did they not tell us their plan? Why disappear without explanation?" Kim Jiwan rose from his seat. "Permission to speak, Chancellor." "Speak." Analyst Kim. "I believe I can answer that. Earth did try to explain." Ambassador Park presented tactical analysis. He warned that the swarm was different this time. He offered military assistance and the council laughed at him, told him to leave warfare to the civilized species. So Earth stopped asking for permission. Kim paused, then continued. "There is a saying on Earth. It is easier to ask for forgiveness than permission." Humanity knew the council would not approve of a deep space strike into swarm territory. Too risky, too aggressive, so they did not act. They just did what needed doing, and lost half their fleet. Someone stated quietly. "Yes," Kim agreed. "They lost half their fleet, and saved the entire council. I believe they would say it was worth it." The session continued for hours. Delegates debated, argued, discussed. Finally, a resolution was proposed. The Galactic Unity Council formally recognizes the sacrifice of Earth's military forces in defense of Council space. We acknowledge that human tactical doctrine and weapons technology proved effective in circumstances where our own approaches failed. We propose that Earth be granted full voting membership in the Council and that human military experts be consulted in future defensive planning. The vote was unanimous, but when they tried to contact Admiral Choi to inform her of the Council's decision, they found the human fleet was already leaving. The repairs were not complete. Many ships were still damaged, but the humans had done what they could with what they had, and now they were going home. Choi's final transmission was brief. "Thank you for the medical assistance and repair facilities. Earth appreciates the Council's hospitality, but our people want to go home. We have memorials to hold, families to comfort. We do not need recognition. We need to take care of our own." "Admiral, please wait," Vexthor transmitted. "The Council wants to honor your fallen. We want to." "Chancellor," Choi interrupted gently. "With respect, Earth does not fight for honor or recognition. We fight because it is right, because someone has to. The Council can pass whatever resolutions it wants, but the humans who died out there in dark space, they did not die for Council approval. They died protecting people they had never met. That is enough. The human fleet departed Council space in good order. Despite their damage, they formed up in a ragged but disciplined formation, and jumped to faster-than-light travel, heading back to Earth. Lahaina watched them go from her fight. They saved us all, her wingman stated, and they are just leaving. No parades, no celebrations. That is how Earth is, Lahaina stated quietly. Thinking of her grandmother's stories, they do what needs doing, then they go home. In the weeks that followed, the Council tried to understand what had happened. Military analysts studied every piece of data they could find. Engineers examined the human weapons and tactics. Diplomats tried to establish better relationships with Earth, and slowly a new understanding emerged. Humanity's technology was not primitive, it was different. Where the Council had spent millennia perfecting energy weapons and shields, Earth had perfected the art of kinetic warfare, of stealth, of striking from unexpected angles. Their so-called primitive railguns could hit harder than energy lances, because they delivered solid mass at extreme speeds. Their outdated chemical explosives worked perfectly in environments where energy weapons failed. Their simple tactics of hitting targets from darkness and disappearing before counterattacks could be organized were devastatingly effective. Earth had not been primitive, Earth had been specialized, and in the right circumstances that specialization was exactly what was needed. Director Valshawn compiled a full report on the human operation. He titled it The Silent War: How Earth Defeated the Void Swarm. It became required reading for every military officer in Council space. The final section of the report contained a warning. Humanity fights differently than the Council. They accept higher risks. They embrace unconventional tactics. They are willing to make sacrifices that other species would consider unacceptable. This is not a weakness. It is a strength, but it is also a warning. The species we mocked as primitive just accomplished what the combined Council fleets could not. We should remember that before we judge them again. 3 months after the battle, Ambassador Park returned to the Council chamber. He came alone as he had before. He wore the same simple black suit. The delegate stood as he entered. A gesture of respect. Park nodded in acknowledgement but did not smile. Ambassador Park Vexthor stated, "The Council has voted to grant Earth full membership. We want to formally apologize for our previous attitude toward your people." "Apology accepted," Park stated simply. "We also want to establish a new military cooperation protocol. We hope to learn from Earth's tactical approach." Park was quiet for a moment. "Chancellor, Earth will share what we know. But understand this. Humanity did not develop our military doctrine to impress anyone. We developed it because we had to, because our world taught us hard lessons about survival, about doing whatever was necessary, about fighting in ways that others would not. We understand that now, do you?" Park looked around the chamber. "Because in 3 months I expect you will forget. You will go back to seeing Earth as the primitive newcomers, and the next time there is a crisis you will make the same mistake. Assume we have nothing to contribute. Ignore our warnings until you need us again." Vexthor's light patterns showed shame. "We will try to do better. Try is not enough, Chancellor, but it is a start." Park moved toward his seat. "Earth will remain a member of the Council. We will contribute where we can, but we will also remember who stood with us and who laughed at us when we tried to help." He sat down. The session began, and in the human section, Ambassador Park Minyo sat quietly, representing a species that had proven itself in the only way that truly mattered. Not through words, through action. Not through boasting, through sacrifice. Not through demanding respect, through earning it. The Council had mocked Earth, but Earth had answered with something more powerful than any mockery. Earth had answered with victory. Silent, deadly, complete, and the galaxy would never forget.